Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to meet another one of those people that I tip my hat to all the time. Not a person living in Milford who says this should be better, this could be better, people should do more, but a person who steps up and says, put me in. I'm willing to donate my time, part of my life, and make it better for Milford. And as I've always said, to me, the school committee is the most important vote that any parent, any homeowner, basically most residents in Milford will ever make. As you get older, I remember fighting to have an hour or so with my child every night when they got to high school because they were always busy doing something. And yet we're talking about people who control immediately 6 to 7 hours a day of your child's life and then set them up for the rest of their lives. So let's start with an introduction.
Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Michael Aghajanian. I'm actually currently on school committee. I'm nearing the end of my 3-year term. I'm a veteran. I'm a cybersecurity executive. I'm a father. I'm a husband, and I'm from Milford. And so I've been proud to serve on school committee for the past 2.5, 3 years.
Before we get going, Michael, was it what you expected 3 years ago when you first? I remember when you first came on talking about wanting to be on the school committee.
Well, it started off somewhat like I expected, and then this thing called COVID hit, and so for all of us who are on school committee, we went into this whole different realm of everything was new, and you were just absorbing information very quickly, and so we went through what I kind of joke around 6 years of experience in a year. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting year and a half in school committee, but now it's kind of leveled back out to kind of there's some normalcy now.
Yeah, and I laugh because normalcy. For 40 years, we added one child per year to the school system. Because I remember in '74 when we graduated, first class out of that high school, there was 222. A few years ago, it was 264. Now, all of a sudden, normal, you're adding half a memorial school every year at 200 plus kids a year.
Yeah.
So I don't know how anybody could have picked a more challenging environment to start, but you did.
Yes. COVID and yeah, the population growth in Milford has been pretty dramatic, which has been a challenge, and so we've been addressing those challenges, and hopefully we'll have a new high school in the future and whatnot.
Not hopefully. Now I think it's just when.
I agree.
That old high school, she's paid us back with 40 plus years. Let's start. Michael, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Again, I'm Michael Aghajanian. I'm a Milford resident. I'm from Milford. I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. A cybersecurity executive. I've owned 2 businesses, and I have 3 years of experience on school committee in tough times with a dramatic increase in population and obviously COVID. And I would like to continue with that experience I've built with some projects that we have moving forward and try to finish them out before I decide to leave the committee. So I would appreciate everybody's vote. I have the experience. I'm from Milford, and I care.
What do you think the 3 biggest challenges you're going to face in the new 3-year period?
It's interesting. New period. I wouldn't say it's new, but
Extended 3
extended.
years.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the challenge that we're addressing now, the big challenge is obviously the population increase in Milford. I think for me, that's one of the top problems to solve. And so we're moving forward, building some. We're extending classrooms in Brookside. We're bringing in these pre-built rooms that will be the nicest classrooms in the district, which is ironic. Luckily, Brookside has a fantastic space behind it where we can actually go ahead and build these. So that's in progress. So we're hoping, I think it's 2024 to actually start using them. And as soon as they're ready, we're going to start. So that will help. We've been submitting our statement of interest, which is the process to get the state to bring us into the program to help us fund a new high school. So we desperately need a new high school. The building is old, as you said. She's paid us back many times over, but the facility itself is not. The space is not built for the programming that we need in today's environment, and that's the biggest problem. Also, we're turning literally, we're taking a classroom which would be a normal classroom for 20, 25 kids, and we're splitting it into two. We're the high school staff. Josh Otland is our principal, has been amazing, being very creative on how to fit students, safely and comfortably into the high school, and so that's been an ongoing problem, and we've been solving it the best we can, and so that's going to be, I think, the forefront of the focus of the school committee for the next three to 10 years.
Well, when you think about that high school, when Paul Revere built it, I remember we were all excited because we were leaving what's now Stacy. And there was new technology in this high school. It had rotary phones that you could call classroom to classroom. So, you start thinking about what technology, I mean, you're a techie.
I am.
To me, the high school is built as a bunker. Those walls are solid. But I can't see going too much further on the technology that's band-aided in.
Yeah, no, the high school was built a certain way for the times there, and unfortunately the way it was built, it's hard to upgrade, right, the way it's built. And so that's where it's reached its end of life. We can't retrofit it to the way we need to teach today.
Any opinion on, do we build new, do we renovate?
I do. The way that we need to build new. I think we need to build new. Once we get accepted into the state program, that's when we will release funding for the feasibility study. And, obviously we'll have smart people come in who do this for a living, and they'll tell us where to go, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be a new build.
Where would we build?
I have no idea. That's why we're going to bring smart people in to help us. Obviously there's ideas, but we need to have the smart people come in and look at the town property and be like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Because I have no idea.
The only place I can think of we have enough space is Asylum Street to build a new high school. But then again, I start thinking about the traffic that would be through the university, even Major Road 140. I'm a little worried about trying to build new, because that's going to run us 300 plus million. Even refurbing it's probably going to be 175.
Yeah, agreed. And there are, and I don't remember them off the top of my head. We had a brief from the state 2 years ago. If you look at doing like a refurbished, they fund a lot less of it, percentage-wise, a lot less. So I think when it comes to the financial piece and where and when and whatnot, my guess is we'll probably go for a full. And we are, our latest submission, and this, I'm pretty sure the public knows, it is public information, is that, we are looking to include the 8th grade to 12th grade in that facility, which will help alleviate some of the population in Stacy, moving the 8th grade out of Stacy into this new building with the high school. And then we would have junior high, which would be 8th and 9th grade, which would be separated from the rest of the high school. So that's where we're going. So
Well, I think Stacy, again, kind of at its breaking point.
well, you think the high school is hard to renovate. Stacy's been harder. Literal granite built, walls.
Well, I remember when I moved back to Milford, I got a complex because I had been away for 10 years. I came back, and West Street, where I went to first grade, parking lot. Oliver Street, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, apartments. Spruce Street for 6th grade, a library. And Stacy, 7th and 8th grade, was boarded up. I was totally, getting a complex to say, am I a jinx at every school I went to?
I actually grew up right around the corner from the Oliver Street School.
No, we lived on Water Street, so we were right there.
Yeah.
But, you look and you say, every 10 years, we've got to plan on a major event. We've got 5 schools. They last 40 to 50 years. So it means about every 10 years, you're going to either do a major renovation or a new school.
And for some reason, we're a bit behind. So uh, we're catching up.
Well, I think this one's the killer because it's the high
It is.
school.
Oh, it is, yeah.
You know, I mean, we thought Brookside was enormous of an expense. Then came Woodland at 60 million. Now this, if we're lucky, it'll be 175 million. If it's new, it's probably 250 to 300. What would you look at to be the biggest changes with the new school? Any idea?
What do you mean the biggest changes?
What would you build? Well, you said build in 8th grade.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that's a pretty big change, is adding, space to pull the 8th grade in. Just being creative, we need to relieve some of the stress that Stacy moving the 8th grade out, I think makes a lot of sense. I know up here in the Northeast that's not super usual, but when you go down south and other places in the U.S., it's very normal, to have what they call the junior high school, which is that 8th, 9th grade, whatnot. So, I think that's that. I'd like to see a pool built into the new high school. The funding from the state typically does not include that, so we as a town would have to,
Right.
pony up for that. So I would like, personally, that
Well, if we renovate,
Pool.
we get to keep the pool.
maybe. I have no idea. I would assume so, but that pool's also old as well too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to see the pool. I think that's always been a special kind of piece of our community in our school.
And maybe we'll even get a field house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I look at places like Shrewsbury, when we go up there for tournaments, you come back saying, wow, I
Yep.
wish we could have this for our kids.
Yep. We'll get there. It's going to take some time.
Now, the town infrastructure is being pushed because we're getting more and more kids coming into the town.
Yep.
What can we do?
Well, it's funny you asked that. On a personal level, I've had that discussion with friends and family, and even just inquired, with like how do we slow things down, and it really comes to the town itself, and the town doing the town planning long term. Right now, we don't have a great long-term master plan for our town, which I think is desperately needed. I think the select board is actually looking at bringing somebody in for like downtown and whatnot. But I think long-term, we desperately in this town need a town planner or somebody to look at and build a 30-year plan. And I don't mean like an engineer. I mean like somebody who's looking at like the bylaws, the zoning, et cetera, et cetera. Because the only way to stop the population growth in Milford is to start changing some zoning rules. And that's a town-wide problem to solve.
But can we do that with the Chapter 40Bs and all?
I think we've satisfied that now.
Really?
I think we've satisfied. Again, I'm not the expert. You'd have to talk to John Erickson, but I'm pretty sure either we have or we're very close to satisfying that. Because
I think we were very close a long time ago, and then they changed the rules.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Anyways, but yeah. So I think there's that to start changing some zoning. But as of right now, I mean, there's not much more room left. There's that I don't remember the name of it, but there's that block of apartments that's going to be built, and after that, there's not much else room unless they start,
Every time I start to believe that, somehow they find a way
Agreed.
of squeezing in.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was when we were growing up, the paradigm was, the Laurel Woods and Hopedale, 1 and 2 bedrooms, no kids. It was all either very young families just starting out before they had families, or very old people. Now all of a sudden, with the price of rent, you're seeing 2-bedroom apartments or condos with kids.
Well, the new development that's being built with the apartments, the forecast of children for it was very small, because they said, oh, it's only like 1-bedroom apartments and they're small. But as you just said, with the rising rates of rent and whatnot, it's going to introduce more children into our community, which is going to increase the population. But at some point, it's got to slow down. So
We keep saying that,
I know,
right?
it's true. I know.
I
Yeah.
feel like I jinxed everybody when I told Bob Trombley, what do you need all this room for? You're getting one extra kid per year. And now all of a sudden Kevin comes back and says, you want to try 200?
Yeah. No, it's been pretty.
And I mean, 200 kids, that's half a memorial school every year.
Yep.
And you think about it, Stacy probably won't get touched for 15 years.
Correct.
And I'm guessing, because I'm thinking, once we get the high school approved, we kind of go, I won't say to the bottom of the list of the SBA, but it's going to be a while before our need builds up to where they'll fund us again. We got a lot of kids coming in with special needs. What do we do to address that population?
Well, we have a very solid special needs program in Milford, which I'm proud of. So we've already built it out. So we have the structure. We've been hiring and growing that program so we can handle, those children who need the extra help. And then we have the EL students, English learners, which we've been aggressively the past couple of years. The school system has been hiring, and thanks to FinCom cooperating with us, we've been able to start to really kind of fill gaps and hire appropriately to be able to get the ratios of teachers to EL students up. I wouldn't say it's better. We have ways to go. But between those two populations, it is Milford's super unique. It's interesting. I always say that we're like a little city. We offer services that a city offers in this little town, which I'm actually quite proud of. We are very resourceful for a small community, so much so that other towns look to us if they need help with some special needs. They'll ask us to help out, which is
Well,
great.
our rep, Brian Murray, coined the phrase, at least it was the first time I heard around here, that Milford was a gateway town. Because everybody always talked about gateway cities, Fall River, New Bedford.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we're more of a gateway town. We're a lot smaller, but we have all of the same requirements.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've been lucky the last few years because you say the FinCom help. Really, the state's been the one that's been helping us. I remember 2 years ago when you guys presented a budget saying, we need an incremental $6 million. There was a short pause in my heart rate. I said, where are we going to come up with $6 million? But the state came up with 7 extra.
Yep.
And then they did it again last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing when I think they targeted for the Student Opportunity Act, they targeted towns with high special needs population. Milford rang the bell. Towns with high ELL, English language learners, Milford rang the bell. And towns with high numbers of low income, Milford rang the bell.
Yeah, we are literally most communities in New England, forget Mass, New England, most communities have seen a decrease in population. Milford is in a handful of communities where we've seen actually an increase in population, which I think we should be proud of. Obviously people are coming here for good reasons, because we're a great community. But yes, we are checking all these boxes when it comes to state funding, and the governor announced this week that they've funded, it's like their budget for the state with the largest increase for education ever. And so we are thinking that our funds from the state are going to be, again, a big jump this year, which is super helpful.
Well, it would be because, again, I was a little nervous, but I'm always nervous when it comes down to money.
Sure.
When we were talking about a 9% increase in the budget, it's like, where are we going to find this money? And now if the state comes through, we can breathe easier.
Yeah.
When you look at the school system, one of the fundamental questions, you're in industry, but you're both local and nationwide with both jobs, but when you're recruiting a person to come into the area, one of the first questions that always seems to be asked is, can my child get a good education in Milford? How would you answer that?
A resounding yes. And I know I'm on school committee, and my wife is a school teacher, but that gives me really interesting insight. I also grew up here, so a lot of the administration I went to high school with myself, and I know very deeply how the school operates for multiple reasons. And so, why? So again, Milford, we have built this district that can handle a variety of needs, which is, I think, a huge plus. Two, we're trilingual. We don't celebrate this enough in this town or in the area, but we're trilingual. You can go to Milford and, you have students speaking English, Portuguese, and, Spanish. A lot of our staff, our foreign language departments, I mean, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. We have the resources in this town because we speak multiple languages, and that's definitely when you leave high school, if you can speak more than one language, that's a huge leg up, in the world. And what I think is the best part about our school system is that it's a very diverse group of students and staff, just like the real world, right? So it's not like a charter school that can hand select certain types of students and whatnot. We're a public school system, which means we represent the public. So yes, you'll learn your education, but you're also going to learn how to operate in a diverse world, which is what's going to happen when you graduate. You're going to move on to college or a trade or wherever you're going to go, and you have to operate in the real world. And so I think going through our school system teaches you that, which I think is a huge lesson learned. So I'm very proud of the diversity in our school system. I'm proud of the staff who put it all together and their diversity. And I think when you look at our students who are graduating the high school and the level of colleges they're going to, so if you want to be go into a Ivy League school, we have the programs to do it. If you're just looking for a really good, solid education to go into the job world right after high school, we can do it. So we have a lot of programs that cater to students, and when you leave our school system, you have a very well-rounded view of life and academics.
Well, I've always said that, and please don't take this wrong, but I guess when I start off that way, I'm risking you will. School committee's biased.
We are.
Parents are biased. We go to a play at the Davern Auditorium. It's Broadway. Why? Because it's our kids.
Of course.
You go into the concerts. It's phenomenal because it's our kids. So, to me, the independent judges of our education are the colleges. And I'm really proud that with Milford Education, my daughters got into every school they applied to. And they weren't easy schools. The question then comes out, well, if they got in, how did they do? How do Milford kids do? Do they last? Because that to me is the real jury, is how do the kids do when they go to Ivy League schools, baby Ivies, and solid middle schools? What would you say?
Like I said, I think we set our students up for success because they're not just learning academics; they're also learning how to deal with life, and diversity. Our system's diverse, all ethnicities, multiple languages. So that sets, I think, students up for better success. It's just one less thing they have to learn when they go to college, or when they go to a trade school, or when they go into the workforce. They already have a good foundation of 14 years of that.
I agree with you. When I look at the results of our students, and luckily we get some of them that come back because they want to come back to Milford.
And speaking of all this, just test scores. Let's just jump right in there.
Let's talk about the MCAS because that's always a touchy subject.
Yeah. And so our MCAS results this year came back, and when you look at it statewide, we're pretty average, right? Which is, again, for the services that we do, that's pretty amazing, right? And the high percentage of EL students. By the way, the MCAS, they're all in English. So if you're an EL student, which is 40% of our district, you're already at a disadvantage because that's not your native language, right? And so you have to take this test in English. So right there, kind of sets a tone, right? Which it amazes me that we give this test.
Well, if I came to you and said, Michael, you got a year or a year and a half, and you're going to take a comprehensive test in Mandarin.
Yeah, right.
Okay, do I learn Mandarin? Could I even learn it in a year and a half? Or
Yeah.
do I learn the subject matter once I know Mandarin?
No, it's amazing. I used to coach JV high school soccer, and half of the team were EL students. And some of them, I would say, of that half, maybe maybe 10% of the team, 10, 20% of the team, these students, for the first time, they're EL off, right, they just came right into our district, and they spoke no English. And coaching them, even that 3-4 months, how they spoke little to no English in the beginning, and after 4 months, they actually could, they were doing much better. And then meeting them a year later, wow, they're fluent. It's amazing how quickly when you're immersed. But my point in all this, so the MCAS scores, they're always very touchy, and I always kind of, I want to say joke around, but it's also real, especially when we're in town meeting talking about money. MCAS scores equate, to property values, right? So it's important that MCAS scores are high or higher. One, we want to be teaching our kids well, but we also want to make sure our property values are, maintaining. Well, when you look at the MCAS scores, when the districts look, we always have what we call comparable districts. So that they also break them out and say, hey, your comparable districts are these, I think, 10 districts. So when you look at the state, we're pretty average, which is great. When you look at our comparables, we're above average, right? And these are cities that we're competing against. And then when you even dive into our scores, you have fifth grade reading scored above average for the whole state, right? Our high school English scored above average for the whole state. So we have, again, I'm very proud of Milford because I can see we're biased, but when you start to look at the data in our scores, we actually have a very, very good school district.
I always refer to somebody who I thought was the most passionate man about education, probably next to Paul Raftery, Tommy Davern. When Tommy had the 8th grade in Middle School East, that was his world. And when my daughter went there, I remember I figured I'd get a reaction from him. And I said, Tommy, why do your MCAS suck? The look on his face, and he instantly looked at me and says, 'cause you're ignorant. And I said, okay, enlighten me. And he explained to me, he said, Al, I'll put my top students up against any town around here, any town in the state. The difference is we have a very bimodal distribution. Our top kids, we have a Gaussian curve.
Yep.
They do as well as anybody. But then we have a second curve of kids who just learning English.
Yeah.
And how do we expect them to compete when they're trying to learn the language and learn the subject matter? He says, but what the state does is normalizes them.
Yes.
So we get an average number, which puts us behind a lot of towns around us.
Yep. No, absolutely. When you look at the EL learners versus, just native speakers right there, boom, I would 100% agree with that. Our scores are very good if you, look at the English native speakers.
And then my daughter, who is involved in the Best Buddies program, Special Olympics, put it all in perspective where one day she said, Dad, my job as an educator is to get each child up to their potential, and maybe a little bit more. But I have to realize that not every child has the same potential.
Mm-hmm.
So I should be judged on how well I get them to be as good as they can. And that really hit me because we do have a lot of special needs kids.
Yeah.
And we've taken a lot of heat from people who say we invest too much in special needs. How would you answer that?
it's a horrible thought process, to be quite honest. So from an emotional, personal perspective, I'm very passionate. If you're a child in our community living here, I don't care how you got here. It's not that child's fault. And if you're on a doorstep, we're gonna we're gonna take care of you, right? And I'm very passionate about that. So if that child's special needs, English learner, whatever, I don't care. It's our duty as a community to take care of that child. And so yes, I would. If somebody said that to me, I'd get very angry very quick.
Yeah, my reaction was not very pleasant.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about special needs, do we address enough of the entire spectrum? We know we do a lot for the kids who need help to get to the typical. Do we do enough for the top 10% to get them even higher?
I guess I'm not sure your question, but generally, we have, we have a director of social emotional learning, and then we have our special ed director, and between the both of them, they are trying to address the full spectrum of special needs, everything from English learners to students who are a bit older.
No, what I'm thinking of, Michael, is the top 10% of our class.
Oh, you mean we have a focus on special needs? Are we getting to the
Aren't
top?
they special needs? And what if they
Okay, I understand what you're
are?
saying.
What are we doing to get them to be our next Nobel laureates?
So I think that's a great question. I've had this discussion on a personal level multiple times. I think the past, 5 to 6 years, the school committee is really focused on, in my tech world, we call it break fix, right? We have this huge influx of EL students, and how do we fix this? And the school committee has been really focused, especially the administration, on how do we fix it. We've gotten to the point where, okay, we've got a structure in place. There's still more work to be done. However, we need to also start focusing on enrichment programs. So that's, I think, a area of growth for our school system in the next 3 years, where we can start focusing back on enrichment programs for these kids who want to excel. I think we're doing a good job, but I think we could do a lot better. What's happened in the past 10 years is, as the population's grown, we've had to cut out enrichment programs throughout the whole district to focus on these students who are EL or any kind of special needs. So I think the focus, I know in the school committee this past 2 years, we've started to have these conversations like, hey, we need to start to fund these enrichment programs come back to help these other students who want to excel. Now, with that said, a lot of those students who want to excel, they're self-motivated as well too, right? But I do think we do need to bring back some AP courses or other types of enrichment programs to allow those students to excel.
We've come so far because 74, when we wanted to take more science classes than were offered, we got sent to Franklin, to Dean Junior College. Principal Paul Raftery was worried that you couldn't offer us the chemistry, the biology. So somehow he got Dean Junior to fund 3 people from Milford going there to take classes. I thought it was great. But on the other hand, we had to have a car, there were things that came about. Today it seems like you can get almost or more than that in the media center or wherever you take your courses. Are we still pushing that to help kids excel?
Pushing what?
Getting kids into advanced placement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm very confident. We are pushing children into those courses that we have. I think, like I said, we need more of those enrichment courses to offer more like we used to. But the past few years, as our population has grown, we've had to be creative and really focus on the core. But I think we're getting to the point where school committee, we have started talking about, hey, it's time to start funding these enrichment programs again.
One of the things that's always been hard to understand, when I grew up in Milford, probably when you grew up in Milford, if you're going to college, you went to Milford High. If you wanted to be a tradesman, you went to BVT. Mm-hmm. And I think of people like my father, who came over to Milford. He had his 4 years of school that he got in Portugal, and that's all you got before you had to work. Put him in an organic chemistry class, he wouldn't do well. Give him a tool. He was an artist. Problem is, to get into BVT, you got to be in the top 10 or 15% of your class. So what can we do for students who aren't academically gifted, but when you think of tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, they can make a good living.
There, a lot of trades, especially plumbing and electrical, there's shortages, and the shortages of that are going to continue. And so, I agree. I think those trades you can do very well. Yes, when I went to high school, we still had the shop area, which was in the E-wing, right?
Yep.
Big shops. So I don't know what we can do now because the physical space is not there. I know the current high school administration has talked about, how do we better provide for students who don't want to go to college. So there's a lot more, career counseling, right? So we are starting programs like that to help as well too. But I think in the new high school, there's an opportunity to start to bring back some of these trades.
See, that's what I'm wondering, because now is the time to start planning for those type programs.
Yeah.
Because if we don't build a space in, and we may have to pay for it ourselves, but one thing I've always been proud of, I've never seen town meeting turn down legitimate kids' needs.
Yeah.
If the kids of Milford needed something, town meeting somehow came up with the money to do it.
Yeah.
But that would be something I'd love to be able to see discussion and thought going into, to say, hey, how about bringing back the old shop areas and outfitting it with tools that kids can learn?
Yeah, no, I think in the 80s and 90s, there's this big push, everybody go to college, and then I think it's biting us in the butt now because we retrofitted a lot of these education spaces that were, potential shops or, trades, and they're gone. So now it's like, okay, now we have shortages of these trades, and the BVTs of the world are also in very high demand, and so.
I'm not belittling or trying to not accept what Mike Fitzpatrick has done at BVT. It's fantastic. When you look at the percentage that graduate and go to college, but I worry about people like my father. He was not a dumb man just because he didn't want to go to college. He was an artist with tools. But if he went to Milford Stacy, he would have never gotten into BVT. So I worry that we're not giving enough of an opportunity to people who could be very good tradesmen. And even biotech operator, 50, 60 grand to start. To me, that's good money.
I think there's the third piece is the military, right? Having the option to join the military. I know when I was in high school, it just wasn't there. You were actually discouraged to talk to recruiters.
Well, that was Vietnam and that whole.
Well, I'm not that old. Yeah. So there was a stigma, and that stigma started to lift away, which is good. But I think your options in high school are obviously enter the workforce, do a trade, go to college, or join the military, right? And I think all of those four options are valid options.
It's funny how it's changed, because I was down in Raleigh in the airport, and a couple service people came through. And I looked, I said, their coffee's on me. And they just looked. I said, thank you for all you do for me. And I think that attitude is now starting to come back, that we understand if it wasn't for the people who put their lives on the line, I wouldn't have all the privileges that I have now. So hopefully that will come back even stronger.
Yeah, no, I know. I wish when I was in high school that I joined the military right after high school. I was not ready to go to UMass Amherst, and I found the Marines later. So I think that should be an option. Like the four options are, graduating, enter the workforce, do a trade, military or college.
Now I may get myself in trouble, but of all the services, you picked the Marines?
I did.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, you pick the toughest, the highest standard. Well, there'll be 3 other services or 4 that'll get mad at me. But when we think of the Marines, those are the guys in the front lines. They're the tip of the spear.
Yes.
Hard to have anything but admiration for somebody who put their lives on the line for my rights. Question comes up. Read everything in the paper about violence in schools. A few years ago, well, let me start with a basic question. Milford schools safe?
I believe they are. We have an absolutely fantastic relationship with our local police department. They're extremely active in our school systems. And I think they're as safe as we can be. I'm proud of how the administration deals with potential issues. I don't think they overreact, but they come down with a firm hand. So they, if there is a report of something, the administration will take it seriously. And like I said, I feel they don't overreact, but they also let the student population know, like, hey, this is not acceptable here. And if needed, they'll get law enforcement involved very quickly. So yeah, no, I feel that the school system is as safe as we can make it in our community.
Years ago, a proposal came up before the town. And I remember looking at Chris Moran when we were in the middle of our meeting. It was to put SWAT members in the schools. And I looked at him and I said, God help us if we say no to this and something happens. How could you say no? Because the thing that hit me the hardest was they said, we're part of a regional SWAT group that can be in Milford within 40 minutes of any issue. And one of us asked a question saying, well, how long is a school issue normally take? They said 18. So to me, it was kind of, they're going to be there 20 minutes after all is said and done. But it was a lot of money. It was $600,000. And there were some people who didn't think we should have law enforcement wandering our halls. Any comments?
Sure. I think it's a whole different discussion, but there's different ways to approach security, right? From being in the Marine Corps and also my cybersecurity background, when you talk about like threat actors, we call them. And you can focus on bad things or bad people, meaning that like bad object, like a weapon would be a bad object. We in this country, we tend to focus on bad objects, not bad people, or troubled people, or somebody who needs help, right? And so I think where we excel in our district is we do have a director of social emotional learning, and her whole charter is to run a staff where we are identifying children who have needs, or they might be in trouble, or they're stressed, and being proactive in talking to those students, I think is the best security that we can have. I think having officers roam the halls with weapons, there's a place and time for that, but I think, step one is to be just talking to students, right? Just talking to students and ask them, what's wrong? How can I help you, right? I think that is our first and foremost first line of defense and security. Now you're going towards somebody who needs help rather than focusing on a weapon, right? You're now focusing on the need of that person, and then going into the whole thought of intelligence. Now okay, this person's in need. Now there's some information that could be fed to law enforcement if needed, or could be fed to other professionals to help deal with it. So I think in our school system we've done a very good job at identifying children who have needs. Can we get better? Absolutely. But we actually have a director of social emotional learning, and she has a staff, and they're fantastic.
Another sore subject always, school choice. It's costing us $1 million+ a year.
Well, I think school choice, I think that's a bit outdated now, to be quite honest. Like school choice, we are not letting students into our school system anymore. Maybe a couple grades here and there, but we're at capacity. So I think school choice is less of a conversation now because we don't have room. So we're not allowing students to choice
Well,
in.
why do you think so many kids are going out?
Um, so I don't feel that I don't feel that problem. Well, that problem is not. It's not above average for a district our size. I do think there is some. I know that this is a touchy subject, but I think there is some what I call white flight. So there are some community members who are concerned with our diversity, and so they choice their kids out to other districts who aren't as diverse, and they think that's getting a better education. I argue with that all day long, saying no, you're going to get a better education in a more diverse community.
It's interesting because when I first came back to Milford, I was told about the good areas of Milford
Yeah.
and the troubled children. It took me a little while to realize that I was one of them. I said, thank God nobody ever told me I wasn't a good kid in the Heights, because I don't know how I would have reacted. I was one of the kids who walked out of his house for the first time and said, Mom, these people speak a funny language. What are they speaking? English. Oh, I guess we need to learn that. But, overall, I agree with you. I think you come out stronger in a diverse area.
Yeah.
And again, the ultimate judges in my mind are the colleges. Are we getting kids into the right colleges or the better colleges? And the right or better to me is judged by their parents. I was very happy with the colleges my children chose. Even better that they were only 20 miles away from home, so I got to see them all the time. But the school choice issue it's just an economic one. When they see $1 million delta going out the door, that's $1 million less we can use on our own kids.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't like the idea of school choice as a state program, because that's money that's leaving those districts, and to make the district better, you should keep your child in that district and get involved in the district. By removing those funds and resources from the district just makes the district have to work harder.
As we keep getting more and more money from the state, is there any programs you'd like to see the money directed towards?
Yes. The high school, our principal, Josh Otlin, they've started a night school for students last year. It was just small. It was like 20 spots. And it was for those, again, students who are a little older, who were coming, they're immigrants coming late for whatever reason. And the staff at the high school identified, like, hey, these students are struggling during the day because they have to work, right? And so the high school adjusted and said, hey, let's do a night program. I think there was like 20-something spots. Anyways, the school committee green-lighted it last year, said, yeah, let's try it. We're on board. It was wide support. And the program filled up very quick. And they came back this year. They're going to grow it again. The school committee came back and said, what do you need for funding? Because we're all in. And so that program is moving forward and growing more. And it was a success. Why is it a success? Because we get gold or measured by the state of how many students graduate. So from a purely numbers point of view, it's not good when we don't have students who don't graduate. From a ethical point of view, it's not good if we have students who don't graduate. So this program checks the box off both. It's a wonderful program. It's done well. The students love it, and it allows some flexibility for those students who have to work during the day for whatever reason.
So it gives kids who, whatever the reason, they have to support their family, they have to do something,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to still get a high school diploma.
Yes,
Well, what could be wrong with that?
it's fantastic.
And saying 20 kids going to 30 or 40, if most of them graduate, we're that much further ahead.
Yep, great program. I'd like to see that continue and actually grow to a point where it makes sense for us. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Brookside expansion. We spent $4 million to build an expansion. And I remember when it first came before us, it was the FinCom that asked the school committee, please don't use the word modular. Because back when in Memorial and Woodland, modular meant those hideous trailers.
Like construction sites use, yeah. I remember, yeah.
And all of a sudden, the school committee explained it's only modular in how they're built. They're permanent additions.
Yeah. These will be the nicest classrooms in the district.
Was it worth it?
Well,
we haven't used it yet.
we haven't used it yet. Absolutely. Yeah, we need the space. We absolutely need the space. I think we should have more, personally. If we could build more, I think we should. We need the space pretty bad.
Well, if we get extra funding from the state, would you advocate building more?
If there was space, yeah, sure. Yep. Because again, the population growth is going to continue for a couple of years. Again, cross our fingers. Hopefully, it slows down. But I think we're at a point in our district that we need to be creative.
Are there any programs that you think we're overfunding?
No, I think the mindset is we're an expanding district. The mindset is, are we funding the district? I look at it, each child gets a budget, right? And my question always is, are we increasing that budget or keeping it the same for each child? Forget the whole town budget. Are we, each child gets a number in my head. And the question is it going up, or is it maintaining, or is it going down? And as the district grows, we have to grow the budget, accordingly to make sure that each of those children get the slice they deserve. And so I think we need to fund the schools responsibly more as our population's growing. And we're playing catch up still, right? Our population exploded, and as you know in FinCom, we keep asking for increases in the budget. And it's because we're still playing catch up from, a couple years ago with that big explosion.
Well, 10, 20 years ago, we had the discussion that the town was funding greater amounts than the state was increasing. The last few years, it's been flipped on its head. We're nowhere near.
Yeah.
When you start talking about an incremental $7 million a year, the town of Milford hasn't come close to adding that.
Right. Yep.
And it looks like this year it's going to be, touch wood, another 6 or 7 or more incremental above. Is it enough?
Is it ever enough? But no. I think we could be a bit more aggressive at expanding services in our schools. Like I said, a lot of the enrichment programs were cut a couple of years ago because of the massive growth. And so I think there's opportunities to continue to grow those programs again in a responsible way. But we need to start planning for it now. And like I said, the school committee has started to have those discussions like, hey, what about this and what about that? So
We started to talk about the salaries of aides, because everything we hear is that all the towns around us are paying their teachers' aides a lot more, and we keep being a training ground, that we train them up, and then they go to a next town over.
Yeah, so we have TAs and BAs, right? Teachers assistants and behavioral assistants. So last year we did give a raise to I think it was the TAs, and this year we are looking at doing the same.
Okay. Because I hate to see Milford be a training ground.
Yeah, I can't talk about what's going on
obviously.
now. However, though, but I on a personal level, I 100% agree. I've been a big advocate. I think the TAs and BAs should get substantial raises because,
We want to keep them.
we want to keep them. Yeah, and replace them is very expensive.
Come to that point. Michael, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I'm Michael Aghajanian. I'm currently on school committee. I've had 3 years under my belt during COVID and a large population growth. I care about our town. I have a daughter. I'm a husband. I'm a veteran. I'm a cybersecurity executive, so I have the business acumen to be able to look at budgets and ask the right questions, and I care.
I think the fundamental question is, where are you sending your daughter to school?
She goes to school at Memorial.
And to me, you can say everything and we can listen to blah, 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 but there's no more sacred decision than how you're going to treat your daughter.
Yep, there's no question in our household, that she was going to go through the Milford Public School System, because I do believe as a parent, it's a very, very good school system, and because of the diversity.
Well, I remember when we were trying to decide, my oldest was in a Montessori program in Holliston, and we came to Milford and met with Jose Vieira, and I said, how do I assure that my daughter gets the best she can out of education in Milford? And he looked at me point blank and said, get involved. The more that you're involved, the more your child will blossom. And he was right.
Agreed with that one.
So, again, let's hope that we can get more and more parents involved in the education. And we get more people like you. I'd love to see 10, don't take this wrong, I'd love to see 10 people fighting for school committee positions.
Yeah, same here.
I'm happy that we got 5 going for 2 positions. I'd like to see that more and more. The killer is when you get 10% voter turnout. It's like Michael and the 4 other people that he's working with to fill those 2 slots are going to dictate so many things about how your child's future comes about.
Yeah, people forget the school committee manages 2/3 of the town's budget and 80% of the town's employees, right? And has a direction in the town's, children.
And that's the key. It manages 100% of our kids.
Yep.
I mean, the 2/3 of the budget, yes. The employees, yes. But all the kids.
Every one of them.
Well, thank you for stepping up and helping.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for joining. I've always made the pledge that I'll never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, not my place. But I'll beg you to come out and vote. When I see us having 10, 12% voter turnout, it really hurts. Because these people, especially for the school committee, have such a monumental impact on our kids' lives. And if you don't have kids, you probably have a house, either buying it or renting it, and that property value, as you've mentioned, is really affected. So as always, thanks for joining. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight.
Not too long since I've been home, been running all my life just